Are you out there getting it? That's Delivered Podcast. Let's go. Are you out there? You out there getting it? Welcome to That's Delivered. Today we have an incredible honor of speaking with Ellen Voie, a true trailblazer in the transportation industry. Ellen is the founder of Women in Trucking Association and the Women in Trucking Scholarship Foundation. And she also hosts a show on SiriusXM, Road Dog Trucking. Ellen, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I look forward to the conversation.
You're awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, Ellen, you have such a unique journey. And from earning a degree in traffic and transportation management to becoming a consultant and founding a movement. Let's dive in. What initially drove you into the world of transportation?
You know, when I stand up in front of women in audiences and I ask them, how many of you in high school or college said that you wanted to work in transportation? Very few people raise their hands. We somehow end up here and then we don't leave. And actually, I originally in high school wanted to go to school for broadcast journalism. That was my goal. Yeah.
Nice.
But I went to work at a steel fabricating plant and I was doing drafting. I had taken drafting in high school. And it's kind of a tragic story. My mother had passed away and I wasn't sure. I was 19 years old. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And they said, well, what if we move you into the traffic department and we send you to school? And I thought, okay, what's traffic? So they put me in the traffic department. I was the assistant traffic manager. And then I finished my diploma in traffic and transportation management and then was later promoted to traffic manager, where I was responsible for all incoming raw material, the steel, and all outgoing material handling equipment. 3 plants. We had 3 of our own drivers. And then, our stuff is all over. I mean, it was material handling equipment. So it was a lot of flatbed stuff.
Wow. So safety was key, probably with flatbed.
Absolutely. And
Wow.
at the time I was 19, 20 years old and very few female traffic managers, especially in steel fabricating plants. So,
Man, so what was it like stepping into a field that was traditionally male dominated? Let's speak on that one.
well, first of all, I have to say that the best part of it was that the owner of the company believed in me and he knew that I could do the job. So obviously I delivered. But the hardest part was getting credibility as a young woman in the trucking industry. And I'm going to go back. This was 1980. This is a long time ago, before deregulation even. And so as a young woman in the trucking industry, I had to prove that I knew what I was talking about. And sometimes that was a challenge.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'll bet. Was that one of your biggest challenges you faced as a woman in the environment, or was there some others? I'm sure. I can only
Well, I'll
guess.
tell you a little secret.
Okay.
Before deregulation, everything was run by tariffs. And so everything was the same price, didn't matter what carrier, and they had very limited authority. So they would try to get you to use their companies based on bribes. And so they would come in and they'd offer me all kinds of things, and I would just say, "Get out." You know, I'm serious. It was not a good environment because that's the way they operated, and I just felt like very uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was good for our company, and so I turned things around and said, "No, you're going to go on service, even though all your prices are the same. We're going to judge you based on your service, the quality of the service." So, and then deregulation happened, and then they started, freight rates really changed at that time. But it was very difficult to establish that and hold my, be firm and hold my ground.
Wow. Man, I'll bet. Yeah, man, there's moments that in your career you've made, you question your decision, or was there moments where you strengthened your resolve to stay? Is there anything you remember that was pivotal in that area?
Not as far as transportation. I will say that making the decision when I started my family, I made the decision to do consulting, and that worked out wonderful because I have 2 kids. So for 18 years, they basically were by my side, and they would actually come with me to the trucking companies, and and when I'd pick up paperwork and things like that. So That was difficult. But during those 18 years, I raised two wonderful children, and I also earned my diploma. I'm sorry, I also earned my bachelor's and then my master's in communication at the University of Wisconsin in Stevens Point. So went to school, had two kids, did consulting, and their dad, my former husband, we owned three trucks. So we had a very small trucking company, and he was on the road a lot. So it was a different lifestyle.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, two wonderful careers coinciding and coexisting, raising a family. That could be challenging. Um, how many I guess what was the number of people or customers you had at one time as a consultant for
So my
juggling?
customers were in central Wisconsin, and they were as small as one truck, and the largest one was 32 trucks.
Wow.
Because after that point, then they can take it in-house. So by consulting, I meant I kept their trucks legal, their drivers legal. I did the driver qualification files. I audited their logbooks. I did all their fuel taxes. I could read tariffs and things like that. So having that diploma in traffic and transportation management gave me that credibility and the knowledge to be able to do that. To do that.
Wow. So uh, how did that side of the business give you new insights into challenges of transportation? I mean, it probably opened the door to quite a range of things.
Over those 18 years, there were a lot of changes in the industry, a lot of regulations, and the trucking industry is very slow to change. They don't like having the government tell them. I mean, I remember when Qualcomm first came out, and every truck was being tracked, and drivers are like, "Well, I don't want to be tracked." And now look at everything they do. Everyone knows every movement they make. So it was very different because drivers, first of all, had a higher opinion of themselves, and the industry had a higher opinion of drivers. Where today, a lot of drivers come into the industry just because it's a job. Where in those days, it was a lot of them, their grandparents or their parents were in the industry. So it's a lot different. It's no longer the knights of the road.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, you're absolutely true. I mean, if they want to do something new, it does take a long time for it to actually be implemented. It's sometimes some things get pushed back or delayed. In fact, you're right. Wow. So I can go into the birth of women in trucking. You got to feel that pressure. You got to make something come from it, like, pressure that makes diamonds, So
I like
you
that.
officially launched Women in Trucking Association in 2007. What led to that movement?
So after I completed my master's in communication, I was hired by Trucker Buddy International. Are you familiar with that program? It's a pen pal program. So I ran that program for 6 years, and that was a nonprofit association. So then I was suddenly in the nonprofit world. Well, I was hired by Schneider. They asked me to come and work for them because I had a background in trucking and the family issues, and my job was manager of recruiting and retention programs. And so that meant corporate level initiatives to attract and retain drivers, focusing on specific groups, returning military, Hispanics, seniors, and women. And they said, figure out how to attract and retain women. Well, at the time, and again, remember I had an association background then because of Trucker Buddy. At the time, I was working on my pilot's license, and I belonged to a women's aviation association. And I thought, well, how can there be something for women pilots and there's nothing for women in the trucking industry? So I used a model. I copied a lot of their stuff, which I told them I did. I said I'm copying a lot of it, and made it a 501c6, which is a dues-based membership organization, which includes both corporate and individual members, and put together an amazing board of directors. One of my first board was all women because people said, well, you need this woman on, you need this woman. One of my first directors was Lana Batts, and she had been president of the Truckload Carriers Association. So by having these very powerful women with names that people recognized on the board, it gave us a little bit of credibility to start with at Women in Trucking. But our mission has never changed. It's threefold. It's to encourage the employment of women in the industry, to address obstacles that might keep women from either entering or succeeding, And thirdly, to celebrate success, which means highlight the pioneers and showcase what women have done. So here we are, what, 16 years later, 17 years later, and the mission has never changed, but the organization has changed greatly.
Wow. So you've seen it grow and you also been able to hold on to that key values and never let that go. That's amazing. Wow. What a great story. Um, Man, that's touching to see that you put forth that effort like that and you got to see the fruitage of your labor. That's really, really huge and a lot of people could benefit from that as well.
It
Um,
was,
I
one of the
applaud that.
questions, I'm often asked is the biggest struggle in the first year. And my goal in the first year was to hit 500 members. And that's pretty good, for a nationwide organization. We did hit the 500 members. But the biggest challenge was I knew a lot of people because of my role at Trucker Buddies. So they said, well, Ellen, we're going to believe in you the first year. But if you don't deliver, we're not going to pay for the second year and we're not going to renew. So the biggest challenge was making sure that we delivered on what we said we were going to deliver on. And as an association, most of that is communication and information. And so we had to come up with insights on how people could attract and retain more women in the industry. And we had to do it fast.
That's amazing. Let's touch on that. Maybe some of our listeners aren't familiar with Trucker Buddy. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Trucker Buddy is a pen pal program where elementary classes like grades 2 to 4, so somewhere in there, um, a truck driver will send a postcard once a week to the class and say, well, here's where I'm going, and maybe talk about geography or math and the, fuel consumption or whatever. And then once a month, all the children in the class will write a letter and the teacher will put them in a manila envelope and send them to the driver. No last names are used. I mean, everything goes through the teacher, but it's a great image program for the trucking industry because kids can see the truck driver as a human being.
Wow. Huh. That is great engagement, and also helping them put a face to that big truck
Absolutely.
or a name or a message. I mean, that's great. Wow. And what was the origin of that? How did that get started?
It was started by a man named Gary King here in Wisconsin. He was a truck driver, and his children's class asked him to send postcards, and he started it. And I think Trucker Buddy is still around. It hasn't. It's been struggling. So, but it's truckerbuddy.org if anyone's interested in checking it out.
Wow. Oh, nice. I like that. That's a great story. And then also you use that to also propel you and to help you, get what you need to get done out of it too. That's great. The inspiration is huge. Um, so yeah, just kind of follow up. What were some types of early goals you set? 500 in a year that you set. What were some other goals that you were able to achieve or evolved over the years?
So the biggest part of an association, being a member of an association, is finding out what the trends are, what other companies are doing. How can we educate the public? So we started working with a lot of universities on doing research. Like we did research on truck cab design. The University of Wisconsin in Stout, they had some graduate classes, and so they would like look at the trucks and see how comfortable were women in those trucks and what maybe could be changed so that we could accommodate shorter statured individuals. So we worked with uh, a lot of researchers so that we could have information. We also did some of our own studies. We did a best practice research on what are some of the best practices for carriers that have a higher percentage of women in the industry, not just drivers, but at all levels. And basically we had a weekly newsletter that came out email, and then I went to a lot of trade shows.
Those are
Lots of
fine.
trade shows
Yeah.
to share a message and
Hmm.
sign people up as members.
I mean, all that traveling and the weather, all those things. And then also too, it says 15% of your members are men. Can you talk about the importance of male alliances and your mission to support women in transportation?
Absolutely. If you go back, you'll see that it's a very male populated environment. So if we don't have men at the conversation, helping us problem solve, then we're not going to solve these problems ourselves if we exclude men from that conversation. And what's been really surprising to me is how many men have supported our mission to bring more women in. But I will tell you what's really changed over the 17 years. Originally, it was, oh, wow, 50% of the population is women, and we just haven't tapped into that market, and we need drivers. Okay, well, that's great. But I wanted them to see the value in what women bring. And that was whether women are more risk averse, whether it's in the boardroom or in the truck, which means typically it results in a safer driver, because you're avoiding situations that might lead to crashes. But I will tell you that I didn't have that data in the beginning. And why do women leave a company? Why do women leave the industry? What brings women in the industry? The number one reason women come into the industry is because of money, because women can make the same amount of money as men. So once we started doing our research and asking our members, like, why did you come into the industry? Here's another little tidbit for your listeners. Women will leave a trucking company if they don't feel valued. Women want their dispatcher and their company to have their back, to make sure that they're safe, and get them home to their family. Guess what men are looking for?
Curious.
Pay equity. Men want pay equity. If you get a gravy load, I better get a gravy load, right? Well, that's not what women are necessarily looking for. Women want a company that says, I care about you. I'm going to get you home. I'm going to make sure that your truck is maintained well. So if they feel that the company isn't looking out for them as an individual, they will move on. Where for men, it's more the dollar.
Wow.
And that's what our research has found, which I find fascinating because women are more relationship oriented. So we need to feel that our company cares about us. And we need to feel that our dispatcher cares about us. So it's information like that when I could stand up in front of trucking companies and say, this is what brings women to your company. This is why they're going to leave. This is what you can do to accommodate them. And here's such a simple one. And it's different now because it is, it's 24. But back in 2007, one simple thing was, how about buying women's shirts for your female drivers? And because they buy.
It's so true. Even as men, we see that. I don't know how that may look or translate when I say it, but we're like, that's got to be rough. That's
Yeah.
not even for like police officers and firefighters as well. It's like, man, why do they do it like that?
Right. Because women have to fit into the norm. So companies that want to be better at accommodating will ask women, how can we better accommodate you? The other one that I'm really proud of is that we worked with the truck manufacturers, the OEMs, on truck cab design and ergonomics, and had our female drivers talk about what they could be done differently. Like, okay, on a long nose, let's put the hydraulics on there so that you're not lifting that hood, when you're doing the pre-trip. What about women are looking for more creature comforts in the cab, more storage, more compartments. Also making sure that women can see over the dash and see the mirrors and be able to reach the pedals, because typically women are shorter and have shorter arms and legs than men. So it's how do we make the truck accommodate different size people? And the truck manufacturers used to design trucks for the 95th percentile male, and because that's who drove the trucks. Well, now they're saying, oh, we get it. Let's see what we can do to make the truck more accommodating. Not saying build a truck for women at all. I'm saying let's make women as comfortable in the truck as a taller male would be. And that helps shorter statured men too.
Hey, truckers, I want to talk to you about something every driver needs: a safe and reliable place to park. Long hauls, tight schedules, and a constant hunt for a good spot can be stressful. That's where Truck Parking Club comes in. Truck Parking Club is a game changer you've been waiting for. They make finding truck parking as easy as checking your map, with options for daily, monthly, and even trailer-only parking. You've got flexibility at your fingertips. Their nationwide network means you can park confidently knowing there's a spot waiting for you, whether you're crossing the state or the country. And here's the kicker. Truck Parking Club lets you book and pay online, so there's no hassle when you pull in. Just reserve your spot and get back to what matters the most, hitting the road and making those miles count. Right now, we've got an exclusive deal just for you. Use the promo code DELIVERED at checkout for an additional $25 off. That's right, $25 off for promo code DELIVERED. Just for listening to That's Delivered podcast. Don't settle for risky roadside parking. Trust Truck Parking Club to keep you and your rig secure. Check them out at truckparkingclub.com. Use promo code DELIVERED for your special discount. Tell them Ray from That's Delivered sent you.
Absolutely. Variety is good, I think. And the more that we see that, the more that we also understand the individual. And like I said, the longevity of what women can do. I mean, the fact that they're able to put more time in with the company, because let's face it, men, we do things that cut our life short because we're looking for that dollar, probably, like you said.
Sometimes men don't realize that women are having a challenge. Like, okay, here's a great one. Restroom access. Okay. So for women, first of all, privacy is very important. You can't water a tire on the side of the road, as men can. And I'm being kind of, gross here, but a lot of companies, especially during the pandemic, didn't want to allow access to their restrooms because they didn't want people coming in. Yeah. So we've combined forces with other associations to pass legislation to require companies to allow the drivers to use a restroom. And that's pretty sad that we would have to have that kind of legislation. But I hear women over and over again, they'll say, well, I delivered to this place and they wouldn't let me use their restroom. Right. That's just wrong.
Yeah. I was thinking about people with IBS, Crohn's, things like that. Need bathroom access is key. So paving the way for a lot of other individuals as well. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you're a champion for helping people and diversifying people's minds as to widen out. I mean, I think that's great. How would you?
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I want to share a quick story.
Go ahead.
So we work with the truck stops as well as trucking companies, truck manufacturers. And one time, TA Petro came to us and said, we want to know what we could do better with the showers. And so I asked our members, I said, well, what do you like about the TA Petro showers and what could they be doing differently? And there were three things that came out of the result of it. One of them was the air exchange in the bathroom was a lot of places wasn't enough so that it took the moisture out of the air. Secondly, the towels, they, especially if you're trying to wrap your hair in a towel. And so TA Petro did three things after our drivers gave them the results. They had to check the exchange of air in the vents every so many days or whatever. They put in big fluffy towels and hair dryers. Okay, there's men out there who use hair dryers. And third, they made their managers shower in the truck stop shower once a month. And it was like guys would come up to me and go, I love those big fluffy towels. It's like, this isn't just a women's issue.
Yeah. We go in there and we look, it's like, man, those are some nice bathrooms. And that's exactly one where I noticed it was at the TA. And so, wow, thank you.
Yeah, so it's not just looking out for women's issues, but it's looking out for drivers' issues as a whole.
Wow.
And not just drivers. I need to elaborate too. Our members are not just drivers. They're women in the C-suite and safety directors and technicians and things like that too. But a lot of the effort is for the driving population because women are so few, make up such a small minority.
Yeah, that variety is key. If you sometimes leave a man alone for a very long time, he gets stuck in his ways. And so it's nice to be able to get taken out of that rut. And you elevate the industry when you do that. So thank you. How do you encourage more men to get involved and become advocates for change versus fighting it or resisting it?
Well, first of all, tell them why the change is beneficial. Why is it a good thing and how it will make their job easier or better or more productive or whatever. That's the first thing you have to do, is you have to have a reason for that change. And then, you know, there are so many wonderful men out there who are so supportive and want to see more women. The one comment I hear a lot is a lot of men would come up to me and say, once I had a daughter, I realized I wanted the world to be better for my daughter. So I would hear that a lot.
Mm.
And I'm like, good for you, because now you're seeing the world from a different angle, right? So we have to have male allies. There's always a few male voices out there that are negative, but it's like they could be few and far between, but they're the ones that are the loudest. They're the ones that stand out in your head, like, oh, that guy just called me a derogatory name, or oh, that guy, said I should be home, barefoot and pregnant, or cooking, or whatever. There's a few men out there who still feel that way, but there's so few. But their voices are too loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those guys that had a daughter and saw the change in myself.
Good
So
for
yeah,
you.
yeah. So when you said that, I totally could relate. So yeah,
There's
that's really cool.
actually there's actually a study that shows that when the boss's wife, so if you have a male boss, when the boss's wife has a baby girl and your boss suddenly has a daughter, the wages for women in the office go up more than men. There's
Wow.
actually a study,
Huh.
and I had a guy come up to me and tell me that one time, and he said, "Oh, you're absolutely right." He said when his wife had their first daughter, he came back to the office and thought, "Would I want my daughter working here?"
Wow. Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do ask ourselves that quite often in conversation amongst ourselves. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The state of women in trucking, then versus now. Just spend a little time on that. When you first started with women in trucking, the landscape was very different. How did things change for women in trucking since then? I know we kind of touched on some of those things, but what have you seen as the biggest wins so far in terms of equality and the opportunity for women?
So the biggest win is that companies are actively trying to recruit and retain women because they're women, not just because they're filling a seat. That's the biggest change I've seen. As I mentioned earlier, in the past, it would be, oh, wow, didn't think about half the population as a driver. Well, now it's like, wow, women are often better with the customers and better with paperwork. And the American Transportation Research Institute found that male commercial drivers are statistically more likely to be involved in a crash. But that's because women are more risk averse. So now the companies are saying, we see what women bring, and they're starting to value women, and they're starting to ask women, how can we better accommodate you and make your life easier? I had a woman reach out to me, and this would never have happened 20 or 30 years ago, but she had a baby and she was pumping breast milk, and in her truck was a camera. And she said, I need privacy. And they said, oh, you're right. Well, put a ball cap over the camera when you're pumping. Who would have thought of that 30 years ago?
Hmm.
That the camera would have been an invasion of privacy for someone who's just had a baby. So those are the things that this industry hadn't thought about. But I think moving forward, we have a lot of things that we need to do to better accommodate all drivers, but women in particular.
Wow. Is it a high number of breastfeeding moms? What's the statistics on that? No one
There's no
knows?
data on
No
it.
data.
Uh, Not a very high number, I'll tell you that. It's more like the local ones, local delivery jobs where, maybe waste management or rider local, things like that. But they're
Right.
still, they pull over during the day and
Yeah, one's enough. Yeah,
yeah.
think about work for a union company and they put that in the contract. And that has helped a lot of women to have a place to go to so that they're not in fear of losing their job because they took some time out to do that. So I didn't know if someone's tracking it to show that, hey, this is more people than we know. that have to deal with this.
We did have a researcher who was doing a study on carriers and their maternity leave policies, and she really couldn't get much of a response. The maternity policies in the office are one thing, but for drivers, it's like, at what point do you say it's no longer safe for a driver to stay in the cab of a truck? So I don't know that we have that data, but it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, just for optics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. And the fact that they're thinking about that with the cameras, that shows that, that's a more humane way to look at things, and versus just, looking after loss of liability issues. They're looking more about the person. So that's good. What are some areas you think still need more progress?
So there's one thing we haven't touched on, and that's same gender training policy. And so, especially for the large carriers that have their own schools, where they send a female trainee out with a male trainer for weeks at a time. And I have a problem with that. But one trucking company tried to have a same gender training policy and send out female trainees with female trainers. And it took longer sometimes for the female trainee to get a trainer. And so the EEOC came in and sued the company for tens of millions of dollars. So now the industry is afraid to change, they're afraid to identify whether they're male or female. And I think that's wrong. There was a study done by two researchers, University of New York, and they did research on the proximity of the bed in a dorm room, and how when students would sit on the bed to chat, the incidence of sexual harassment and sexual assault increased because you're sitting on a bed. So I reached out to them and I said, what if you've got a sleeper berth, 14 inches behind you? And they said, that could be a negative, and so I think carriers need to be much better about either we need more female trainers so that we don't have this issue, or we need to have more policies in place that are much stricter, because there's way too many women being harassed during the training process, and that's got to stop. Let me put it this way. You said you had a daughter, right?
Yeah.
How old is your daughter?
17.
17.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say she calls you up and let's say she's 20, okay, or 21. She calls you up and she goes, hey, Dad, I just finished my training. I went to school. I'm so excited. I get to travel. But Dad, I got to stay in a hotel room with my boss.
Yeah. Right.
What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I already know where you're going when you started the story.
What would you say? You'd say to her, you're not working there, right? But that's what we do.
Yeah. It would be very hard to be positive. It'd be very hard. Yeah.
So this industry needs to, we've done a lot of research on that at Women in Trucking. We actually have a same gender training white paper about some best practices. Pretty simple. You put them all in day cabs. You stay in a hotel, you have separate rooms. I mean, to me, is it more expensive? Absolutely.
Well, in the end, it's cheaper. You talked about that settlement. So
exactly.
Yeah, and then also you think about let's say something were to happen, and you worked all those years, your daughter admired you, and then something were to happen, and she wants nothing to do with that industry too because of a negative experience. It could go really bad.
Yeah, we shouldn't find it acceptable. We need to better accommodate women who are in the training situation.
I like it. I like that. That's smart. That's smart thinking ahead before someone has to suffer some ill effects of poor judgment, poor decisions, poor business planning. Yeah, that's great. Good job. I champion you on that one. You brought it home with the daughter. Oh man! So, are there any specific industries within transportation that you have been slower to? I guess not just you, but transportation industry has been slower to embrace with gender diversity. Question there.
Well, on a positive note, more and more women are becoming safety directors, which I think is wonderful. Where we really struggle is women as technicians, diesel techs. And so there's no reason why a woman can't be a diesel tech. And I know a lot of women who are diesel techs. And they've told me that in some instances, their hands are actually smaller and they can get in the engine. Because look at those engines these days. It's more technology than it is, grease and, things like that. So we need to have more women looking at careers as diesel techs.
How would you inspire someone to pursue that? What are some grassroots things that can be done?
So we tell their stories. We have a member of the month, and so when somebody is a diesel tech, they'll tell their story. What's a typical day like? What do you do? How do hopefully there's no Snap-on calendars anymore in the shop, right?
It just took me a minute there. I was like, what?
Yeah. Remember the old Snap-on calendars?
Yeah, yeah, you took me back there. It was
But
makes a
it's
boy grow
telling,
up fast.
yeah, it's telling them you can do this, and here's another woman who does it. And plus, I know you're going to ask me about the Scholarship Foundation, but we give a lot of scholarships to women pursuing careers as diesel techs. So if we can help them pay for it, and we can tell them what the job is like, and tell them, you can do this, and you're going to make the same amount of money as a man. It's a great career.
Wow. What has it been like? Have you got any feedback from women in the diesel technician world?
Absolutely. Yes. More and more women. I'm so thrilled that more and more women are getting their diesel tech, going to school for 2 to 3 years, depends on, which program you're in. But the other positive is that a lot of the schools now know about the Women in Trucking Scholarship Foundation. So they're sending women to the foundation so that they can get the scholarship. The scholarship's it's $1,000, and you can actually apply more than once. And so I know some women who have actually applied more than once and gotten more help.
Wow, nice. I mean, and the feedback that they get from the career, the satisfaction they get, has anyone been able to speak about that as well?
I haven't heard anyone yet who would leave.
Wow,
So it's been very positive.
that's great. That's really great. We got to put the word out even more. Maybe I can try to get some people on the podcast to talk about their experience. That'd be great. Keep spreading the word. So then we just kind of close on the episode. Got a lot of insight. We've dive into and peel back the pages of a lot of different years that you put in of hard work, and other people also that you've been able to inspire. The conversation has been incredible so far. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the early journey with us. In part two, we're going to explore your work with Women in Trucking Scholarship Foundation and the challenges women still face today, and how all of us can do more to support women in transportation. Just a little teaser, don't miss part two, the conversation with Ellen Voie. It's going to be full of actionable insights and ways that you can get involved. Thank you so much for the first episode, part one.
Thank you for having me on.
That's delivered, baby.